In any high-pressure academic setting, we often observe a specific archetype, that one individual who appears remarkably composed, even serene, prior to a major examination, while others are navigating a crisis of 12 open browser tabs, excessive caffeine intake, and profound existential dread. This person is calm. But what if that calmness isn't apathy? What if it is, instead, the result of a highly effective, science-backed methodology? A method so efficient, it borders on feeling like an unfair advantage, a way of cheating the academic system. These are not arbitrary hacks or anecdotal tips. They are proven techniques, deeply rooted in cognitive psychology and applied neuroscience. These are the precise strategies that elite students often employ, whether they are consciously aware of the science or have simply intuited their effectiveness. So, let's move beyond superficial advice and deconstruct this system from a scientific perspective. Let us first address the science of memory and retention. The majority of academic failure is not, as many fear, a result of intellectual deficiency. People do not fail examinations because they are dumb. They fail because the learning methods they have adopted are fundamentally broken and ineffective. Common strategies, such as highlighting text, passively rereading chapters, or scrolling through notes, offer a false sense of familiarity. These passive activities do not engage the neural mechanisms required for durable memory formation. They do not help the brain retain complex information in a retrievable state. Your brain does not learn by passive input. It learns through active retrieval and deliberate repetition. The analogy to building muscle is surprisingly accurate from a neurological standpoint. Just as resistance training creates micro-tears in a muscle that rebuilds stronger, the act of effortful recall strengthens the specific neural pathway associated with that memory. Every time you successfully retrieve a piece of information, that connection is reinforced and myelinated, making it faster and more accessible in the future. We can conceptualize this process using a framework called the memory ladder. Here is the protocol. Level 1 is the input phase. This involves the initial exposure to the concept. Read the material or watch the lecture one time, focusing on comprehension, not memorization. Level 2 is the reinforcement phase. Crucially, after a 24-hour consolidation period, which allows for sleep-based memory processing, you must attempt to write down everything you remember about the topic. This must be done without consulting your notes. This is your first active retrieval test. Level 3 is the active recall phase. This implements the principle of spaced repetition. You will revisit the material on day 3, day 7, and day 14. This is not passive rereading. This involves using flashcards, answering practice questions, or, most effectively, employing the Feynman Technique. The Feynman Technique requires you to explain the concept in your own simple words, as if teaching a novice. Level 4 is the mastery phase. Here, you must mix old and new topics together during a single study session. This cognitive strategy is known as interleaving. Instead of blocking your time, studying only topic A, then only topic B, you mix them. This practice is proven to skyrocket long-term memory retention, with some studies showing improvements as high as 76%. Each level of this ladder builds structurally upon the previous one. You are progressively leveling up your brain's command of the material. The result is that by the time exam week arrives, you are no longer engaging in the desperate, low-yield activity of cramming. You are simply recalling information that has been deeply encoded. The retrieval feels instinctive and automatic. Next, we must analyze the neuroscience of focus. It is a common complaint that individuals have a focus problem or a short attention span. However, from a behavioral neuroscience perspective, this is often a misdiagnosis. What you likely have is a dopamine management problem. Your brain's reward system, which is mediated by the neurotransmitter dopamine, has been effectively hijacked by an environment of constant, high-novelty stimulation. Endless notifications, social media feeds, and rapid-fire content provide a stream of random, unearned dopamine hits. Consequently, when you attempt to sit down and study a complex, nuanced subject, it feels comparatively boring. Your brain's baseline expectation for stimulation and reward is functionally broken. Here is the scientific and practical solution. You must implement what is known as a dopamine detox rule, or a pre-study refractory period. For 30 minutes prior to your intended study session, you must remove all high dopamine stimuli. This means no phone, no distracting music, no social media. Allow your ambient dopamine levels to reset to a neutral baseline. When you then begin your study session, the inherent interest of the material will be sufficient to engage your focus. Your concentration will feel substantially sharper, perhaps even 10 times more effective, because you are no longer competing with a hyper-stimulated baseline. Furthermore, adapt your timing using what we can call Pomodoro 2.0. The classic 25-minute sprint is often insufficient for complex subjects. Instead, aim for 50 minutes, that's 50, of uninterrupted deep work. This is followed immediately by a 10-minute recovery period. After completing 3 of these 50-on-10 cycles, you must take a longer 30-minute reset. This specific pattern is highly effective because it aligns with your natural ultradian rhythm. This is the brain's innate cyclical wave of high focus followed by a necessary recovery trough, a pattern utilized by top performers, surgeons, and even chess grandmasters. You must understand this critical concept. Your brain was not neuroarchitecturally designed for 5-hour cognitive marathons. It was evolutionarily built for intense, focused sprints of deep intensity, followed by periods of consolidation and rest. Now let us discuss environmental hacks, or how to trick your brain into compliance. You cannot reasonably expect your brain to enter a state of deep focus if your physical environment is signaling distraction. Your brain is a contextual machine. It encodes memories by linking them to the context in which they were learned. This principle is known as context-dependent learning. The psychological implication is that you will recall information more effectively when your retrieval environment, the exam room, matches your learning environment. Here is the practical hack. You must design and dedicate a specific exam zone in your room. This zone should remain consistent. The same lighting, the same desk setup, perhaps even the same instrumental playlist. Critically, your phone must be kept completely out of sight. Visual cues are potent triggers for distraction, even if the phone is silent. Over time, this dedicated setup becomes a powerful neural switch. The physical act of sitting in that chair, in that environment, signals to your brain that it is time for focus. You eventually stop needing to force focus with willpower. Instead, you trigger it through association. This is not a matter of motivation. This is a matter of classical conditioning. Now, let's synthesize these concepts into the high retention formula. This is the ultimate protocol, utilized by memory champions and substantiated by research from institutions like Harvard. The formula consists of 5 key actions: learn, recall, teach, sleep, and move. First, learn actively. You must use visual notes, construct mind maps, or create stories. Do not just passively consume the information, you must engage with it and structure it. Second, recall. Put the textbook away. Actively challenge yourself with questions. Your brain only grows when it is forced to struggle. This cognitive friction is known as desirable difficulty. Third, teach. Explain the concept to a friend, to your mirror, or even to your cat. When you are forced to teach, your brain must reorganize complex information into simple, logical chunks. This is the Feynman Technique in its most practical application. Fourth, sleep. During the deep, slow-wave stages of sleep, your brain replays the neural patterns of what you learned during the day, transferring them to long-term storage. Skipping sleep is functionally equivalent to deleting your day's effort. Fifth, move. Even a brief 10-minute walk has been shown to improve memory encoding by as much as 30%. Exercise literally boosts the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. You can think of BDNF as the fertilizer for your brain's memory circuits. If you execute this 5-step EMS process daily, your learning methodology transforms. It moves from a state of short-term panic and fragile memory to one of long-term, durable mastery. Finally, Let's discuss exam day strategy. This is the cheat that isn't actually cheating, it is applied psychology. We are talking about exam day mastery, the point where most people panic, but you remain calm and methodical. First, engage in pre-exam activation. Immediately before your exam, conduct a 5-minute recall burst. Rapidly summarize everything you can on a blank piece of paper. This primes your brain and reactivates all the relevant neural pathways right before you walk into the room. Second, ensure energy stability. You must drink water every hour. Cognitive performance is highly sensitive to hydration. Even a 2% level of dehydration can lower your focus by 20%. Avoid energy drinks. They are a trap. They induce a rapid spike in attention, which is inevitably followed by a debilitating crash. Third, use the 3-layer reading strategy for the exam itself. On the first pass, skim all headlines and the overall structure for context. On the second pass, focus on conceptual depth and understanding the questions. On the third pass, engage in active recall and problem solving. Fourth, during the exam, always start with the questions you know first. This action triggers a powerful psychological effect called momentum confidence. This is a cognitive bias that, once initiated, boosts your overall performance and cognitive output on the harder questions that follow. This is not cheating the system. It is simply using the operating manual of human psychology to your distinct advantage. So, when someone eventually asks you, "How do you always score so high while staying so calm?" you don't reply, "I studied more." You reply, "I studied scientifically." Because once you understand the fundamental architecture of how your brain actually acquires and retains information, you stop fighting against it. You start mastering it. You come to realize that you do not need luck for success. You need robust systems. You do not need fleeting motivation. You need sustainable momentum. Now, go out there and apply these principles. Make these high-stakes examinations feel like child's play, not because you found a shortcut or an unethical cheat, but because you finally and truly understood the rules of the game. If these psychological strategies resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel for more insights into human behavior, and comment below with the one technique you plan to implement first.